everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob, it's Diana.
Hi, Rob. It's Jackie.
Hi, everybody. And we are joined by a special extra co-host tonight, live via Skype.
Hi, this is Devon Sundberg.
Hi, Devon.
Hi, Devon.
Hi, Devon.
I'm coming today to talk about some articles that relate to women in behavior analysis.
That's right, because the Women in Behavior Analysis Conference is coming up in March of 2018, which it is almost 2018, everybody. I know that date sounds far away. And we thought, well, let's reach out to one of the main organizers of the conference to talk about women in behavior analysis.
I'm really excited.
Thank you.
So, Devon, for the listeners, why don't we start with a summary? Well, actually, you know what? I forgot for the listeners to even mention what it is that we are. We're a podcast about behavior analysis and research. And so we already kind of talked about what research we'll be discussing today. Devon, since you're our special guest and anyone who's listened to our show has heard us talk about ourselves a lot, it's your turn. Why don't you tell the audience all about you?
Well, that's a short story. I came into the field in 2003, right after college, and I started as an ABA therapist, a behavior technician. I already loved my people with autism and special needs, but what I didn't have was a useful science to work with them. So when I found behavior analysis, I fell in love, and it's the career I've had since 2003. That's also where I met my husband.
Ooh.
Oh, we're the same, too.
That's
Yeah.
true. Diana and Rob also found love in the field.
Behavior analysis love. We have a couple of couples that work for us, so we always support that. It's definitely a lifestyle, so it makes it easier to live your life when you're doing it with a team. But his name's Dr. Carl Sundberg, and we worked for a variety of places, and then we started our own center in 2009. And through all of that, I had 3 daughters, running a business, loving behavior analysis, and raising 3 young women. It all came together for me and some colleagues, and we started the Women in Behavior Analysis Conference. I felt like it was definitely a niche that was missing in our field, and I think we can discuss that because everybody says there's so many women in the field.
Right.
Why need for a women's conference? But I think as we work through the articles that we've chosen to discuss today, it'll make perfect sense. So that's really how Women in Behavior Analysis began. I like to call it a boutique conference, so to speak. It's smaller than some of the other conferences. And you can come and enjoy yourself and also get a variety of educational opportunities. So we offer a lot of supervision CEUs and a lot of ethics CEUs in addition to CEUs.
Those are so helpful because it is a nightmare trying to get supervision CEUs at ABAI because everyone like runs to that door and they stand there and you're like punching people in the face like, this is my room. Yeah. So
I need that CEU.
yeah, right. This is mine. So that's great. That's a really good selling point.
Yeah, you can get everything done in one place. And then this year we offered a 3rd day of workshops. And in the morning, we have Sarah Troutman-Eslier presenting ABA Business Boot Camp. So a lot of people out there, a lot of people out there like me who were behavior analysts and then decide to open a business. Well, we kind of need some help. It's a little more difficult than we expected.
Diana and I are currently opening a center right now, and we are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, I know. We should go to boot camp.
We should go to boot camp. Yeah.
Yeah, to boot camp. You can call me and we can cry.
Great.
No, it's a great business. It's hard. And so one way my husband and I, we joke that we stay married because he does the clinical side of things and I do the business side of things.
You got to divide it up.
Yeah. And we don't talk about business at home.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps a lot. Yeah. Women in Behavior Analysis Conference, you can come. You can get mentorship. You can be present if you're an early behavior analyst in a very conducive environment, a supportive environment, and you can develop your network.
So
That's awesome.
Devon, I don't want to stay too much on sort of the nuts and bolts of making a conference because it's not quite our topic. But how does one just say, you know what, I'm making a conference for people? That seems like a pretty huge jump. You just kind of woke up and said, you know what, I think I could do this today. This is how I'll spend my weekend is planning a conference. Or
should be ready to roll on Monday.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I'm very naive, and I typically bite off big projects and then realize how big they were after I bit them off. I do love organizing. I have a great team. First year I started it, a colleague and I put on, her name's Dr. Kim Soder-Martel. We put on our state ABA conference, the Hoosier Association for Behavior Analysis, and we really enjoyed doing that. And then I also have a great sidekick, Sarah Cox, who is our marketing guru, Facebook guru. She loves Yelp. I don't know if you're familiar with Yelp, but that helps us put on a conference in another city. So this conference is in Nashville, Tennessee. The other way I've been very fortunate is I think we were able to pinpoint something that was missing in our field. And there are some people that really value our mission. And so they're looking out for us and looking out for me and saving me from myself in a lot of ways. So we have our advisory committee, and that consists of Jennifer Zarconi, Amy Odom, the editor of JAB, Jonathan Tarbach, huge feminist, if you didn't know Jonathan Tarbach. He might be a bigger feminist than I am. And we have a Yelp representative, and then this year, Dr. Linda LeBlanc joined our advisory committee as well. So they look out.
Good group.
I know, and we're very lucky to have them. And we'll read a little bit about Dr. LeBlanc and her background, but you can see throughout that how she's so helpful with putting on this conference.
Well, thank you for giving me a little background information, because it just seems like such a huge endeavor.
Thanks for reminding me.
Oh, yeah.
4 months away.
The website looks great. I was looking at it the other day. Very, very professional.
And how did you choose Nashville?
Nashville it's fun. And I didn't want to I'm in Indiana, and I didn't want people to think that it's just an Indiana thing. I wanted this to be recognized as a national conference. And it's a great weekend to have a women's weekend, a great place to have a women's weekend in Nashville. And I kind of like the culture of Nashville as well. And I think of it as kind of a masculine culture. Yeah. And to have a women's conference, and, with all the honky tonks around and whiskey and, kind of fun where you can go and let your hair down.
Cool. It's a really fun city. That's why I was wondering.
I also like whiskey, so I would fit right in.
Oh yeah, I don't.
It's okay.
I don't, but I can boot scoot.
Yeah, you sure can.
All right. Well, let's get into our topic. So we have 3 articles that Devon shared with us that we'll be discussing, and I'll read them in kind of the order I think we'll discuss them. So the first is Inconspicuous Sources of Behavioral Control, the Case of Gendered Practices by Ruiz from the Behavior Analyst Today. And then we'll be discussing Trends in Women's Participation at the Meetings of the Association for Behavior Analysis, 1975 to 2005, by Simon Morris Smith from the Behavior Analyst, 2007. And as you had kind of referred to, Devon will be talking about my mentors and their influences on my career it's an interview with Linda LeBlanc from the Behavior Analyst 2015. Devon, you wanted to start with the Ruiz article as kind of a nice sort of entry point to the topic.
Starting with the Maria Ruiz article, I want to talk about how we came about choosing these articles. And this was a great opportunity for me to become really in touch with the literature about women in behavior analysis. So the way we decided to approach this was to pull articles that would give you a sample of WiBA. And one of the things that we're going to talk about at WiBA is gender issues. So I thought a great article to review would be Inconspicuous Sources of Behavioral Control, the Case of Gendered Practices. And Maria Ruiz has written some other articles. She also has B.F. Skinner's Radical Behaviorism, Historical Misconstructions and Grounds for Feminist Reconstruction, and Personal Agency and Feminist Theory, Evicting the Elusive Dweller. And something I'd like the listeners to know is that if you Google the WiBA website, we have a list of resources. And so all of the articles that we're reviewing today, you can find their citations on our webpage.
Awesome.
And also, if anybody knows of any additional articles to add to our list of resources on women in behavior analysis, please let us know. I'm finding new ones every once in a while. I found a good one to add last night, some book chapters instead of articles. And a presentation that's related to this paper that we're going to review is a presentation with the presenting author being Chada Dixon, and it's honoring the life and work of Maria Ruiz. So that will be on day one of the conference. But this article, the purpose of it was to present a deeper understanding of the control exerted by gendered cultural practices and applying behavior analysis to gender-related social processing in particular. And one reason I really appreciated this article was all the time people say, why a women's conference in behavior analysis? And since we started this endeavor, I have many basic reasons to provide training to women in behavior analysis, to celebrate and recognize. As we started this project, I've learned of so many women that I didn't learn about in grad school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ellen Ruiz and Barbara Etzel and B. Barrett. I really want to make sure that people that put the work into establishing behavior analysis, that we can go back and learn about them and recognize them. Highlighting the work of women this year, Janet Twyman and Bridget Taylor are presenting, and they're going to present on their work. They're not going to talk about the trials and tribulations of being a woman in the field of science. So we're also just an opportunity to highlight the exciting work that's going on. It's an opportunity to support early career professionals, provide mentorship in a conducive environment, and promote equitable decision making. But Maria's article brings us into this great depth of why we can have a women's conference. And she talks about how gendered practices, we have to be diligent about gender equality and gendered practices, just like ethical practices. And I love the phrase that she uses in the conclusion, and I think she's paraphrasing some words of Skinner, but she says we have to have deliberate interrogations about the inconspicuous sources of behavioral control embedded in cultural meta-contingencies. So I love that, deliberate interrogations. We have to be rigorous and think about how gender affects our practice all the time. And there was a quote in there about how it impacts our ability to objectively analyze. When we're doing a functional analysis, are we considering how our cultural experience, our history of reinforcement due to our gender is affecting our analysis? Gendered practices impact our ability to develop interventions that will sustain with one's own culture. Dr. Ruiz talks about this in this article about assertiveness and how typically assertiveness is a good skill, but maybe not if you're a woman. And the research shows that when women are assertive, it's not often or as always a positive thing or interpreted positively as if a man is assertive. And so that's how we're often referred to as bitchy when we're being assertive or bossy.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And you hear about these types of problems throughout our culture, and not necessarily as related more specifically to our science or science in general. And I think there can be the misconception that, well, it's all these smart people in science, so of course they're not going to carry the same types of biases into their field of study or into their workplace as you might see more generally. And I think that that's something that, like you're saying, we really need to step back and consider carefully, that the same types of cultural biases that we have outside of our scientific setting can also infiltrate into the scientific setting. And this article is amazing.
It really is.
It's so beautifully written.
And so objective, right? So this, I think sometimes these types of articles can get a little feely.
Right. No, but she lays it down.
This is not feely at all.
No, but it's really eloquently stated.
Yes.
But she highlights how early these differences and how early influences in young girls' lives can be different than in young boys' lives, and how that can really have an impact snowballing from really early age. So just because you end up as a scientist or working in a scientific field doesn't mean that you are free, unfettered from these types of cultural concerns. They're still going to be present. And it's important that we as scientists are thinking about them objectively.
Also, I think sometimes people think that our field may be overlooked, that we wouldn't necessarily see these biases because we are a predominantly female field, but I don't think that is the case. As you can see by a lot of the conferences when it was predominantly male speakers and presenters, even though the conference was predominantly attended by females, which I think is interesting.
Well, and that was a lot in the review of the 75 to...
Right,
the,
2005 article. Yeah,
2005. That sort of struck me, the idea of the women being the quote-unquote kind of bitchy or assertive. Is that why they don't get called to be the invited speakers as much? Because... You know, not that anyone's at the conference going, oh, woman giving me an invited address. No, thank you. But that there's that sort of bias that plays into, I mean, I hope nobody is, but the bias that plays into women getting into the leadership roles that would therefore have people think of them as we should bring them as an invited address because they're in charge of this center or that department in a university because it's just not as well represented.
Right.
Because those invitations to be an invited speaker are completely subjective. There's no systematic way to introduce that. So it's all based on your reputation.
Right.
Who comes to mind when you need to invite someone to a conference, right? And
who
I know
might
we're
bring
gonna
the money in.
Yeah, yeah. Who's the hot ticket? And I know we'll go through those stats a little bit more, but you would expect to see as our field ages more and more invited speakers by women versus men as the demographics of our field continue to shift.
Right.
And maybe that will happen in the future, but at least as of 2005, those numbers were still skewed more towards the men.
Right.
Well, I know the idea of women as leaders, that struck me because it is one of those things that I think is less true as years go on because there are more women in leadership roles. But I mean, I still find that there are folks who don't love the idea of working for a woman, or even though there are some women, I think I've had amazing mentors who are female, but I know that there are people who've worked with, you know, when there's a female in charge, be like, oh, I'm pissed about that, or it bothers them, or there's something weird about it. And it does go back to that sort of, oh, they're bitchy, or it's not the same taking those orders. And it's kind of one of those weird cultural, I mean, I guess it's the cultural meta-contingencies, not cognition. Meta-contingencies, sorry. That it seems to be changing, and you sort of wonder, well, I could kind of see why it would have been that way, but also then why would it change? Just years and years of just having enough women in those roles that people just sort of get used to it. It's just, it's not a discriminative stimulus for roll my eyes, oh, who's this person think they are kind of behavior.
Well, I think a lot more of what we experience is what they refer to as microaggressions. So things that aren't so active, not so assertive, not so in your face discrimination, but a lot of subtleties. And as Maria Ruiz says, gender is an SD for a great deal, a behavioral repertoire. You know, you can't think of girl, you know, or baby girl without thinking pink.
Yeah.
And I did it the other day.
And dollies and little toy play purses with little lipsticks and cell phones.
Poor my daughter. I just want to say that because I've gotten all Diana's boys hand-me-downs. So everyone frequently thinks she's a boy because she owns very little pink. And we were actually at a breakfast the other day, and one of our friends was like, oh, my daughter loves dolls. And I'm like, mine doesn't have one. She just plays with this truck that I got from Diana's kids. But it's true. Yeah, it's true that, like, people think differently based on, you know, just even as a baby, think differently about what your child should be playing with and be exposed to.
Have you guys seen the video? It was going around Facebook a little while ago. I don't know, Devon, if you saw this, but they took babies under 12 months.
And I cried.
Oh, you cried? Okay.
Yeah.
They took babies under 12 months and they dressed them either in boy clothes or girl clothes and then put them in a room with an adult who didn't know them and with a bunch of toys. And the adult, based on the outfit the child was wearing, would bring over certain toys for them to play with and really encourage them to play in different ways. And then at the end, they would reveal, like, this baby that's dressed as a girl is actually a boy. But the adult had had brought over the dollies and was talking to her about how pretty she was and how sweet she was with the dollies and things like that. And it just shows you how early all of that can start.
How early, but I think I would do it too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, we all do it. Yeah.
As that person in the room. And so just a great deal like ethics and practicing ethical behavior, it takes diligence. And so I really appreciate that deliberate interrogations word and how that relates to being cognizant of gender equity. Some other really interesting points in this article. Well, obviously, inequities still exist, and who better to address those social inequities than behavior analysts?
Right.
So that really excites me. This year we were actually going to, and it didn't work out, but the Commit and Act. Have you heard of them? They use acceptance and commitment therapy in Sierra Leone for victims of domestic abuse. That's something that I really want to pull into this conference too, is how are we using behavior analysis to address social issues that affect women or affect gender equality?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that, but I would love to know more.
Was it sort of the idea of accepting that, almost like treating it like post-traumatic stress disorder, or, so accept that these things happened, and then when you're faced with triggers, you can respond differently, or was it different than that? I'm just not familiar with how they'd use ACT for domestic abuse.
I do not know either, but I wanted to find out.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure how far along in the talks you got.
maybe next year.
Happen. And then this article was also just so very relevant to what's happening right now with all the allegations of sexual misconduct in the workplace that are happening right now. And a lot of that is because we do not agree on how we would define sexual harassment. Let me find the quote. Study have shown that the conditions tackled by the term sexual harassment differ widely across the sexes, where women will say there doesn't have to be sexual motivation behind feeling sexually harassed, but more an imbalance of power. Mm-hmm. So men are going to define sexual harassment as having some sexual motivation behind it.
Right.
And then since the term is subject to different interpretations, it's not surprising that we can't solve this problem because we're talking about two different things. If a man thinks that this is a problem because they don't see the imbalance of power and the sexual coercion that's the problem in the workplace. So as these women want to advance their careers, it was funny because I was standing in line next to a woman who had clearly been in the workforce way longer than I had been. And she said, I'm just devastated. I'm devastated to hear about all these men that are being sought out for sexual discrimination and harassment. And she said, that was a problem when I was in the workplace too, but we just ignored it. Huh. Yeah. And I kept that was early, and I kept my mouth shut. But I think the difference is women didn't have the opportunity to advance their careers and become equals like they can now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when somebody of the opposite sex is standing in your way or saying you can't get there without engaging in this behavior with me, that's kind of where this imbalance of power, and then sex is a byproduct. Sex is just added on to that problem. That part of this article really spoke to me.
Do you think that the way that these waves of allegations have been coming out, where it is not just sort of one or two folks and, it's happening in Hollywood, we kind of expect that happens there, those people out there, that this might be reflecting, say, a shift in our cultural metacognition where many people are hearing about these allegations, and rather than sort of just shrugging or doing that kind of old, like, oh, well, that's the kind of thing that happened, really getting upset and really taking the time to look at how they've responded to these allegations in the past, how they would respond. More people are talking about it in a way that, at least from the male perspective, does seem to show a lot more reflection of, wow, sexual harassment is not just, hey, it's, I asked you to have sex with me and I wouldn't take no for an answer. It is that power balance. Because I know I've been thinking very much of how that is different, even from when I was a younger guy in the field and I first started hearing about the idea of sexual harassment. I know it is much more something that I think of as, well, it's that coercion. It's much more subtle. It's not it's not necessarily just I demanded a thing and wouldn't take no for an answer. I mean, do you think that might be a shift in that regard? Maybe it's too early to tell.
Let's hope so. Let's hope that it is a shift in that regard. And I think the other reason why people find it so hard to believe that we would value a women's conference in the field is because I, for one, have been very fortunate and have experienced little to no sexual discrimination, sexual harassment. And I think that's very much because of the work that the people did before me, and entering into the workforce in the 2000s, it just hasn't been a problem. Or when somebody did something, we spoke up and it was taken care of. Mm-hmm. So, and now we're hearing all these allegations that are happening long ago. I think maybe we'll actually see some progress when these behaviors, the sexual misconduct occurs less and less, or B, when it does occur, someone speaks up right away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point to make, is that as things hopefully continue to improve, that more and more women will be able to say, I haven't experienced anything like that, but never to forget that that's because of our predecessors who had to fight so hard to get where they did and speak up in ways that were really challenging for them. So I think that's a really good point.
And that's something we have the luxury of having a panel at the WiBA conference. And so usually the members of our advisory committee and the more senior members of our field, and we even add in a male perspective, sit on the panel. And so we get to hear about those stories. One of the members of the panel last year said, I was at a professional academic meeting and a man wanted my chair and he sat on me.
Oh my God.
What?
He sat on her and he acted like she wasn't there. So
wait, he wasn't joking?
No, he sat on her like he wanted that seat.
Oh
now, was that a gender problem, or is this guy just the worst person
Yeah, he
ever?
seems like the worst.
I don't know. I would love to hear more about the behind the scenes on that one, but
He seems.
The counter argument to that would be, would he do the same thing to a man?
Right.
Probably not.
He probably
I don't know.
wouldn't.
This guy
There's
could just
always-
be that horrible a person.
There's always
Right.
that underlying power play that's present in these stories, whether it's stated or not, is that he wouldn't do that to a man.
He would see the man.
Right.
Yeah. That one just seems so out there, though. I don't know. There's something about sitting on a person that doesn't sound quite as... It's not so gendered so much. It's like, I am just oblivious to social politeness.
yeah,
Oh,
that
boy.
could be it too.
Just the weirdness of the...
That is kind of weird. But you never know. Maybe he was just like, you don't have a right to sit at this table, and I'm not standing.
Yeah, that's the microaggression.
Right.
That's a pretty
I
macroaggression.
mean, that is,
That-
but the underlying statements that are there
Yeah.
are the micro
Right.
side. Yeah.
microaggression would be, shouldn't you be in like the back row or shouldn't you stand? That seems
Shouldn't
more
you
like
be
a
getting me
microaggression.
coffee?
Man spreading, that's the microaggression.
Man spreading.
Oh, you don't know that term?
Well,
No.
I don't know that term.
That's when you're sitting next to someone like on the subway or in like tight chairs, and men still sit with their legs way far apart.
And that's a microaggression? Or that's considered
Everything's a
micro-
microaggression.
That seems unfair. I think we need a precision. We need more precision in our language.
Well,
in
I
this.
think
It's a real thing, and it's a real term, and
It's
the
a
term
real-
is man spreading, and
and
it's taking up more space than you need to because you feel that you warrant it.
So if you're moving into somebody else's space, so like when you're spreading your legs apart, your knees are actually in the space of someone else, right? So, and you usually do not do that if you're sitting next to a man because both of you cannot man spread at the same time.
I would assume that's how I show my dominance to the man sitting next to
Right.
me. My legs
Okay.
spread out the most.
Ha ha! But no, it's a real thing, and it's something that has been studied.
How would you get to the bottom of, is that a gendered microaggression, or is that just some sort of my motivation as a man because of how my legs are or how much leg space I have?
You don't
is
need that much leg space.
to spread out my legs.
You don't though.
But then you'd get down to, because you could ask, but then like even in the Ruiz article, it's not like the teachers know, like, well, I know that I'm telling the girls
Right.
their work is prettier and I'm telling the boys good
Right.
job because of the content. They don't realize it's happening. So how
Right.
does one get to the bottom of that? Because if someone just came out and said, you seem like you're man spreading, it's because you hate women and you're a microaggressor.
No,
I would
people
get
do
very
not-
defensive about
No, people
that.
do not say it that way.
Okay.
I have lots of friends that study this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm not being facetious either.
No, I know,
I literally
right.
like, how would you get to the bottom of that?
So I think usually people would bring it up to you and be like, do you realize what you're doing? Do you realize you're taking more space up? Do you realize that your legs are actually making it impossible for that other person to actually put both feet on the ground, which usually happens with the man spreading.
Okay.
Because then the lady has to cross her legs to make sure that there's room for the guy's leg on the subway.
And what if they say like, oh my God, I totally didn't?
Then it's fine.
Then it wouldn't be anything?
No.
But what else would they say? Oh, sorry, I just didn't think that the women sitting next to me
They
was
would say, I need
valuable.
all this space.
Yeah, that's usually it's not an oh sorry thing.
You actually don't do this, Rob. I'm not trying to pick on you.
I don't
Yeah.
think I would do it on like my couch. Like
Well, that's
that
fine.
counts.
I pretty much lie down when I sit on the couch, but it's my
It's
couch.
a very comfortable
Right.
couch.
Well,
I
it's
know.
my couch.
It's my couch too.
You're right. I'm microaggressed. I'm so sorry.
There's enough couch for both of us. It's fine.
I don't want to talk about gender anymore. Now I'm uncomfortable. Don't throw these truths in my face.
All right.
All right. Well,
I don't know how we got there.
It's okay. We were talking about manspreading.
But I'm glad you brought up the points about the academic setting and the teachers, because I thought that was really a stark revelation, the way that she laid that out.
I would think it would be the opposite. If I were a teacher and I saw a boy, I was like, wow, your handwriting is so neat. Oh, my God. Because boys cannot write neatly to save their lives.
Not all.
That's
all
all our
boys.
oldest son. That is all we compliment him on anymore. It's like, your handwriting is so neat. Because, like, we know he knows the answer, but it is just a sloppy mess.
That's funny.
But that's been studied a lot. Not handwriting, but
I know.
the attention
It has.
given to the students in the class. And what she had said was, the order was white males, minority males, white females, minority females, as far as how much attention they get from the teacher in the class. And then the quality and the type of attention differs as well. So female students are more likely to get attention related to how pretty they look or how their work looks, and boys, the effort that they put into the work.
See, I'm thinking like a behavior analyst. I want boys to make prettier work, so I would therefore focus my reinforcement on the topography, I guess, of their work rather than content.
Well, you're one step ahead then.
Right.
You're
enlightened.
You know me.
I
Super,
do.
Well, and
super woke.
in that same section, when they talk about the SAT scores,
Yeah.
and how there's a 50 to 60 point spread between male and female SAT scores, and then pointing out then that's probably why a lot of women are not going towards those more rigorous professions. Maybe they don't have the scores to do it or to get admitted into some of those programs. And then I think that when we review the Simon article, you can see that play out a bit, because they're still talking about why are women not as represented in JAB, in the basic and the conceptual. And they say, well, it's because of women don't have the interest for it. But you can see that not developing that interest starts at a much earlier age.
Maybe we move to that now. Maybe we move to the Simon article.
Sure.
Sure thing.
You guys want to?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Devon, sound good?
Cool.
Sounds good.
But I was surprised by the 50-point
I was
SAT
too. Yeah, that was very surprising.
spread. And I had heard the statistic before that, girls start out strong in science and math, and then as they move through high school, move downward in the rankings. So that was less surprising in that I'd already heard it, but it still makes me sad to hear it.
To be honest, I sucked at science and math
Oh, yeah.
in high school. I really did.
I won't follow it up with, no, what changed?
No, you know what though? I have to do a lot of active responding. So it does not come natural to me. Diana and I were talking about this the other day about Santa Claus and like believing in Santa Claus because he's real.
Of course he is.
For the children listening to this
Yeah,
podcast,
for
it's
everyone that's
totally common.
listening, Santa's real. But I kept believing in Santa Claus beyond all logic until I was like 16 years old. Like my friends were telling me he was real. I mean, he was, real. And I was beside myself when I found out that he was just magical.
How old are you?
16.
That's too old. That is too old.
Too old.
So shocking.
And Diana knew around 6 years old
I told my parents.
because she's very analytical, and I'm more magical. So I really lost that science and math.
I think that's you though, Jack. I mean, again, the cultural, those kind of small cultural
That's
biases
true.
in place. Who knows how that could have actually had that impact? But that might just be more your personality than the fact
Maybe.
that you're a female.
I'm like, no.
You're just one exemplar.
Yeah, that's true.
As am I, and I'm a very analytic-minded person.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I could see how that could have affected you in terms of people being like, oh, Jackie, it's adorable that you're like that, so don't do math and science because you're a girl.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
All right, everyone, hold that thought 1 second. I want to make sure if you were listening to ABA Inside Track for CEs, well, guess what? You can do so. We are ACE approved by the BACB. All you need to do is apply for them through a link on the podcast info page or on our website, abainsidetrack.com. And as part of the information you need to send us, though, you'll need 2 secret code words that we've sprinkled throughout the episode. And the first of those code words is OIL, O-I-L. You put it in your car. If you live in a place where it's snowy, you will need it for your snowblower. OIL.
So, do you want to tell us about kind of the main crux of the Simon article?
Sure. Do you want to do a trivia question before that?
Oh,
Yes!
yeah.
I love trivia too.
Me too.
So not picking on ABAI, but all my trivia questions have to do with women's involvement in ABAI. So does anybody know how many ABAI presidents there have been?
6.
Total.
10.
ABAI total.
15.
No.
Give us
41
Oh.
ABAI.
Oh
Six
yeah,
is
duh.
wrong.
41 and that's the 41st annual. So that makes
it
sense.
changes every year?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So 41.
Got
I'm
it.
putting it down.
Of those, how many are women?
2.
17.
6.
13.
Oh, you guys are you like my 2? 2.
Price is Right rules, Jackie. You technically you could win if we all go over.
Wow. So what's that percentage?
It's like
I'm gonna
30.
Ooh.
I'm not very good at math, so
Tell me if I'm right.
It's because you're a woman.
that's all right.
Jackie, stop these microaggressions. I don't appreciate them.
It's a 29.7. Let's see if I'm right.
What? Oh,
13 divided by 41. 31.7.
Darn it.
you're real close.
So close.
Linda Hayes was president twice. And who was the first woman president?
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think when that would have been.
Oh,
So
God.
42 presidents or 41 presidents.
I bet it was recently.
Like 2000.
It couldn't be that
Pick a
recently.
year.
There's 13 different years.
Mm-hmm.
But the first, yeah.
And Linda
was-
Hayes was president.
Linda Hayes was twice, so it wasn't her.
Uh-huh.
What about...
It was Beth Sulzer Azeroth.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That makes sense.
I think it was in the 80s, actually.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. She has some really good textbooks.
Some of the other women presidents of ABAI that are also WiBA presenters, either last year or this year, coming up here. Janet Twyman, Sigrid Glenn, Frances McSweeney, and Linda Hayes.
Excellent.
All right.
I did not know some of those were presidents.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought there were only 6 presidents, so I'm not doing so great.
I thought there's only 2, so...
There are almost as many ABAI presidents as presidents of the United States. We should make flashcards.
Oh, my
That would be
gosh.
fun.
Of ABAI presidents?
Yeah.
That's
Rob thinks that's dumb.
I didn't say I didn't not the words I used.
Great idea. Okay, so
Okay.
the second article, there are about, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other articles that really add data to women's participation. They measure women's participation in various areas of the field. So the first one was in 83, oh no, 83, Al Polling, participation by women in behavior analysis. And then the next one was 93, Myers. And then McSweeney wrote some articles, and Amy Odom wrote an article too about the participation of women in behavior analysis and in experimental analysis of behavior. Some related presentations. Last year we had Melissa Nosek present, and her and Laura Groh, I think are the authors, are getting ready to publish some updated data.
Great.
You should have them on your show.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so we can get an update on these numbers.
Yeah, because these are up through 2005, which I think
Right.
of as recent, but now it's not.
so old.
It's actually over
That
a
was just the
decade.
other day, right?
Yeah, I know. It feels like it. Yeah.
I'm thinking 05, like, what was I doing? And I wasn't even out of graduate school in 05. So now I'm thinking about conferences I go to. I'm like, oh, a lot of these things they're talking about, I feel like this can't be the way it is now. These numbers have got to be off.
Well, we shall see. Hopefully they'll have some updated info for us soon. Reading this, I was just amazed at the amount of work that it must have taken to summarize all these data.
Yeah, it looked very tedious.
That's a good word for it.
30 years going through all
name by name
attendees.
What they did was they reviewed, I think it was either 9 or 11 ABAI, or then it was just ABA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Programs.
Yeah,
and then they went all the authors of all the different formats and determined women's name versus men's name. And then there was also an undetermined category.
Right.
So that's how they did their data. And then this was an extension of the polling and the Myers work based on the years. So they looked at more updated years. And then they also looked at the broader array of formats. They looked at participation levels, and then also the more prestigious discussants and invited speakers. And then they also looked at it across domains, and then also across publishing and the journals that are related to those domains.
Very thorough.
Yeah. I wish I had the NOSIC and the GROW data, or that I could remember more from their presentation. But from what I could see is that women are experiencing more parity. They're equal in a lot of ways, but still not reaching parity when it comes to the more prestigious levels of journal editors and associate editors and invited presenters. So I bet what we will find when NOSIC and GROW publish their data is that the trends are right on. It'll be the same, but we're just still catching up. We're still lagging in some ways. And what's really, I think the main point of this is, although women, the membership in ABAI exceeded that of men's starting in 2001, they were still not proportionately represented as authors in various levels of participants throughout the article.
Right. So that's not to say that the number of female presenters and authors is not growing, but it's just not yet keeping pace with the increase in overall female membership at ABAI and in our field as a whole. So we're moving in the right direction.
Right.
It was the percent, and the percentages really kept coming back to being the problem. That the raw numbers were all looking really good. It was that you just don't have as many of those invited speakers. Commensurate to the number of female BCBAs that you would potentially, your pool is getting bigger, but the number that are getting chosen aren't keeping up with that number to do those sort of some of those special roles, and some of the special groups seem to be the areas that weren't really as represented as one would think. You'd think that percentage would change as well.
Yeah. And that may just take time. And you think about any given conference, there are only so many slots for invited speakers.
Right.
And it's not to say that the people who are invited to give those speeches who happen to be male are not awesome presenters and researchers, because they are, and I love hearing all of those talks. Sometimes it just comes down to who have you asked? And I think that's something that everyone has to be keeping in the forefront of their mind if they have the opportunity to be planning these types of things, is, can you expand the number of opportunities for women speakers, or can you make a conscious effort to include women as part of your invited talks?
Right.
I mean, I know when we were talking about this the other night, my thought was that it kind of makes sense that the percentage wouldn't change, even though the raw numbers of members of these groups have gone up, in that you have so many new women entering the field, but who are going to be the invited addresses? Who are going to be the editors of some of the journals? Who are going to run research groups?
The old people.
It's going to be the old people.
I don't mean that, because
be
I just got
ageist
invited to something, so I'm not that old. So
no.
But the older people, the more they have more experience.
Those numbers aren't like, and there were 300 more, women in the group, And wow, 300 of them were doctoral level behavior analysts. They just hadn't joined any of these groups yet. You know, they're going to have to, that would just grow over time. So I would expect that these updated data, and I hope that what they would show is the percentages continued to go up. So maybe even a sharp increase over the past 10 years when the influx of new members are now becoming more and more sort of the second tier of leadership, even sometimes like the first tier, like the bigger names that you're thinking of, as some of the older names that used to get the invited addresses are starting to retire, or they don't want to go out and, yeah, there we go. You can do that too. That's just my thought. I'm curious to see.
Well, that was definitely one of the points in the discussion. And the other one was women who hold academic and research positions versus clinical and private positions.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely.
So maybe there would be more practicing applied clinicians that wouldn't necessarily be publishing as much or in academia, so that they were more likely to be invited.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I mean, it is really hard if you work clinically to do a lot of research. So there just isn't enough time sometimes. So that does make sense. And if our field is, it seems like based on the previous year's arguments with ABAI about it being researcher or more now clinic-based, because it's now more focused around like what can we do with our kids that have a diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder. It makes sense that we would have an increase in membership, but yet not necessarily a similar increase in the research line, because most people are working clinically, so it's a little more challenging to get that research done.
Mm.
But I would also think that the number of female academics in our field has continued to grow.
Absolutely, yeah.
Too.
Mm-hmm.
So that just may take time, right? To start to see that reflected in some of those really highest level prestigious categories.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what the new data have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I appreciated all the work that they did for this. Oh my gosh. Just going like name by name.
And another point that they made too, which I can really relate to, is why women may not be invited or in some of those more prestigious roles is their responsibilities outside.
Yep.
All of the caregiving. I know every time that I want to go to a conference, and my husband and I are in the same field, so usually we both want to go. So it's a matter of finding childcare.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely something that we'll touch upon at WiBA too. We have some presentations that are about motherhood and being a professional behavior analyst, being able to juggle all those balls at the same time.
Yeah, it's a real challenge that it's hard to even like scratch the surface, I think.
No lie.
What all it entails to be a working mother and have professional goals. But it's a really important topic, and one that we should most definitely consider when we're thinking about, why are fewer women getting asked to do these things, right? Taking any amount of time off from work, moving to part-time schedules, being more inflexible in your work hours because you also take care of your children. Even little things like that are, in a sense, microaggressions on your career.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And over time can really build up and, limit the opportunities that you've had to pursue additional promotions, additional research lines, additional publications that down the road can kind of really build up and make it such that even though you've been working this whole time and you're trying to have it all, you're trying to build your career and build your family at the same time, it's really hard to strike that balance, and you may find that other individuals in your field have surpassed you in some areas because your time has been split.
Mm-hmm. But that goes back to the cultural meta contingency about women are primary caregivers.
Right.
And as much as there's as far as I know, no research saying that if a man is a primary caregiver, the child will become a murderer. So, oh my God, we can't do that.
I don't think
there is.
No, there is not.
It's still one of those sort of unspoken rules. And even in families where you have two parents working, and there are so many two-income households these days, there still is sort of that hint of like, you probably should stay home as mother. I'm assuming that this must be happening. I see it a lot more with the people I work with. A lot of times, really younger mothers, or they're usually ABA technicians. my kid's sick, and sometimes you'll hear like, well, I came to work 3 days. I had to stay home from work 3 days, but then my husband took the 4th day. And you sort of want to go, why don't you guys just do 2 and 2?
Or be like me, and I'm like, oh, sorry, husband, you need to stay home all
You call their
week."
husbands and tell them?
I say that to mine.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, you have to stay
You
home.
can say it to your own husband. That's fine.
I do.
We'll touch upon this a little bit with the Linda LeBlanc interview, but she talks about having a double professional household where both husband and the wife are working. And I'll say this about my husband too. He is a 50-50 parenting. He'll take them to the doctor. He'll do the school activities. But what's still stressful for me is that society doesn't always see us as 50-50.
Right.
So
absolutely.
I'm the first one to get the calls from school. I'm the first one to get the calls from the doctor with whatever, test results or whatnot. They don't even think about contacting the dad.
Right.
And that was something I read in a Ruth Bader Ginsburg book. She used to hang up on the school and say, you can call the dad too.
Right.
But wait, your kid's really sick?
So I think definitely we have some really great supportive spouses, and especially in the field of behavior analysis, I feel like we're a very progressive field. But still, society, it's that cultural, the social reinforcement of this is what's expected. The mom is the primary caregiver, and society still sees it that way. So that's stressful. It adds additional stress.
That sounds like one of those areas where you might look at maybe like a behavioral nudge. So instead of the form saying first mother and mother contact information, then father, or caregiver usually, I guess, is the term you'll see more often. But sometimes you still do see father, and then, father contact information, more about who should you contact first. So It's less of a gendered option. And then they just see a name, and I'm sure some people will assume that's probably the mom's name. It looks like a dad's name, but hey, it's probably mom's because that's how it goes, right? This is how I've been brought up. But then it's less about, it's more about who do you want to call, because it's not a matter of who should get the call. Well, the mom, of course. It's who is going to get the call because it makes sense for the family.
Yeah, I would just tell him to call you.
Mm-hmm. And you'd say, stop microaggressing me. Call my husband first.
So just, whenever you have to write in there, like your name and then relationship to child, I always put parent. I don't know why. I just won't put mother. It just bugs me.
I like being a father, but I don't have the same.
I'm the parent. You don't need to know my gender.
How dare you? It's private.
I actually leave that blank.
You're just trust me.
Trust me. Stranger. I know this kid. That's funny. Actually, on a related note, there's another podcast called Longest Shortest Time. Have you guys ever heard of it?
No.
It's a parenthood article. It's a parenthood podcast, and they did a 4-part series on working mothers. So if anyone's interested, I've been listening to it.
Do you cry?
Oh yeah, I cry at all podcasts. Let's be honest. My drive to work.
Comedy
is
bang bang.
Yeah. My drive to work is my cry time.
Get it all out.
Get it all out, and then I can be a happy person again. But it's really interesting that it's something that a lot of people need to talk about and need to be more aware of.
Yeah. Another thing that I feel our society is tacting more so lately is the emotional workload of mothers, and that's the term that they're using. So like mothers are often the one who manage the birthday parties, the doctor's appointments, the play dates, the flu shots, all of those
the
little
lunches.
things. What's going to be for dinner? Yeah, like all the planning aspects. And that can, it can take mental energy to kind of keep all of that going. And that's something that as I get older, there's only so much energy to go around. All our young listeners out there are going to be like super depressed by this conversation. Children are wonderful, and they bring a lot to your life. What's that?
When I'm doing all that planning, I ask my husband to help me by entertaining the kid.
Oh, there you go.
And he gets, the fun guy,
right.
And like gets to play all the games and take them out to the park and things like that. And I'm, not that fun.
Right. That's a good point.
I'm getting stuff done. So.
But that is a way to share the load there too. It's.
Well, I guess
Rob's good at this stuff. I don't want to.
some of it, I think some of it comes down to when we're talking about the idea of the man spreading. Are you just inconsiderate about your spatial awareness, or are you doing it because you have a sense of entitlement? Because, well, I'm not sitting with other men, I'm sitting with women, therefore I should get more space. I think that would be maybe a good discussion for some families to have about. Diana, do you plan the play dates because you enjoy doing that? You think that is a good use of your time, or because you feel that you are the only one who can do it because as a mom that makes more sense?
Some families are like that. We know some families like that have the label mom equals I do everything because I'm the mom. But I don't think in your case that is why.
No, but like
I do
know
housework
I know
because
the
I like
moms.
my house
You
to be
don't-
clean,
Right.
not because I feel I had some sort of a reparation, because I know it's been hard as a female, Diana. I should do the housework. I choose to do that. It's not a gendered
No, we
issue.
know. It's negative reinforcer for you.
It
Whereas
really
for me, I
is.
just don't care. But no, like I know the moms. You don't know, like you don't have anybody's number.
They
in
might think I'm
your-
microaggressing to them if I start randomly
come
texting
on.
them for.
Great now.
for
Rob
play
has a new term, guys. But you don't you don't have their numbers in your phone, like if our son comes up, it's like I want to go play with so and so, like you don't.
I just
you
say
don't-
sure,
you
whatever.
don't know.
That's fine.
You're like just go out the door, just see you.
Sounds good.
One thing
All
I
right,
really
anyway.
liked. One thing I really liked about the Simon article too was in the how to address the disparities, and they recommended moving beyond our field and providing behavior analytic content to other venues other than like schools, but maybe like daycare centers or hospitals or early child cares. They talked about summer camps and that sort of thing, and to spread the knowledge so that people, we can't change anything unless people are aware of it happening, right? So just like those teachers, they didn't know that they were saying different things to boys and girls, but obviously it was happening. So, we could use the principles of behavior analysis to help affect change in how we talk, to different genders, and how we will provide instructions depending on, instructions or play depending on that. So I think that would be cool.
That's a good
How
point.
would you do that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to let's brainstorm. How
So-
could we do that?
Can I tell you? Behavioral skills training. So you do some...
Tell me more.
Okay. So you would, go into the situation and do some observations, right? So take down everything that the teacher's saying to some boy members of the classroom. Take down everything the teacher's saying to the girl members of the class. Then you would come back together, review what was happening, review if there's any difference, and then say, okay, now we're going to practice giving gender neutral statements and gender neutral play things. Then role play that situation. Pretend I'm a boy, pretend I'm a girl. Then, model it beforehand. Then role play, then provide specific feedback, and then come back and do some follow-up to make sure that those things have changed. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Bam!
Who else has an idea?
I think you'd also have to get buy-in.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to tell-
Right.
Yeah. Why is being gender neutral important? And kind of going back to that 50 to 60 SAT score spread.
Right.
Or I love some of Ruiz's talks about, she uses some beautiful language in her article. I have it. She talks about subtleties and veracity.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really is a big deal. It's powerful and cumulative.
Right.
Vastly subtle and inconspicuous and pervasive. So really kind of like, what's the big deal? Well, you kind of have to tell people what the big deal is.
Right.
And that's, presumably why women are not as well represented in basic behavior and, basic research and the conceptual analysis in our field. It's presumably why I couldn't wait to drop chemistry. Because I and took zoology instead.
Yeah.
So it really is.
No, I think that's a great point. And this also reminded me of Hart and Risley's Meaningful Differences study, where they looked at how many words preschool age children heard during the first, I can't remember now, 3 years of their life, right?
Yep.
And they found huge differences between groups by socioeconomic status. So the children in the highest group heard, I think it was 3 million more words than the children in the lowest group.
Because people had other things to think about, presumably is what they said.
Sure. Yeah. They're busy. And that's, day to day, you might not see that difference, but then over time, it's this cumulative effect, like you're saying, that ends up being a real disadvantage for one group. And the same type of thing, although maybe it's more qualitative versus quantitative, could be happening to young girls as well. And I think the idea of going into a daycare center is perfect in just making this awareness for that group.
Right.
It's mostly young women who are running those daycare centers, and you never think that you're teaching differences between young kids, and everyone would probably be shocked and horrified to find that they were. So I think that getting that buy-in wouldn't be that difficult.
Right.
It's just the awareness as the first step.
Man, can I just tell you, side note, the Meaningful Differences book haunts me on a day-to-day basis.
You just talk constantly.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking. This is what's happening. I'm putting on my pants. La, 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 la. Like, literally, I think sometimes she looks at me and she's like, shut up. Because I am so scared after reading that book.
Trying to fit all 3 million words in
You
a
gotta
day.
get them in.
Where am I going to be on this list?
Love it.
All right, before we get too far into the episode, why don't we take a little break, and then we'll be right back.
Hey, ABA Inside Trackers. It's me, Jackie.
And it's me, Diana. Jackie, I'm really excited to be joining you in this commercial because I've also started my career path at Regis.
Yay! Yes, that's right, folks. If you want to start an exciting career in applied behavior analysis, you should check out the Master's and Certificate program in Applied Behavior Analysis at Regis College. You can learn from both Diana and me. Here are some interesting facts about our program.
90% of our 2016 graduates passed the BCBA exam during their first time taking the exam. We think this is a really great testament to the program.
We started an on-campus autism center in fall 2017. The center provides behavior analytic services to children diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder right at Regis College. The center will offer employment opportunities for some of our graduate students. Students working at the center will receive partial tuition remission.
We also offer opportunities for paid clinical placements and graduate assistantships starting in the student's first year. So all of our grad students are currently working in the field either part-time or full-time.
Yes, we help students identify their practicum placements because we think it's imperative students receive excellent training and experience in the application of behavior analysis. Therefore, we screen placements to ensure students receive high-quality practicum placements.
We are approved by the BACB to provide intensive practicum. Students complete at least 750 hours, but most complete much more over the course of 3 semesters. Across that time, students complete a professional portfolio that includes completing a variety of application exercises, such as conducting assessments, developing behavior plans, training curriculum, and more. This portfolio functions as a way to ensure students are learning the essentials of being an effective behavior analyst and is a great way to showcase your work at job interviews upon graduation. I love it.
Students enroll in 2 courses per semester and graduate in a little under 2 years. Our courses are offered in traditional classroom and hybrid formats, which enables a student to focus on one course at a time while still completing the program quickly.
All of the faculty are PhD-level BCBAs with strong applied and research backgrounds in ABA, and all have published papers in respected peer-reviewed journals.
We ensure small class sizes so that all students receive personalized attention from their professors, and advisors are easily accessible to meet with students.
There is also an invited lecture series at Regis, which involves inviting outside experts in ABA to speak on specialized topics relating to practicing ABA, and these are really great opportunities for students to learn from a variety of experts in the field in addition to their professors.
And last summer, we completed an international service trip to Iceland, which we plan to do every other year.
Although we train students to work effectively with individuals diagnosed with autism, we also have opportunities for students to work with individuals with a variety of diagnoses and typically developing individuals as well. In addition, the coursework covers the broad applications of ABA with respect to solving socially important problems.
There are opportunities for students to be involved in faculty research as well.
We have a great location. We're just 12 miles from the center of Boston.
So check us out at www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there.
Keep responding.
And we are back talking about women in behavior analysis with our special guest, Devon Sundberg.
All right. You guys want to talk about Linda?
Yeah, let's
LeBlanc's
talk about
article?
Linda's article.
Can I actually start us off with a question related to Linda's article?
Yeah,
Sure.
I love that,
So
Rob.
we're talking. Oh, thank you. So we're talking about the idea of how could we change some of these assumptions and the veracity of these underlying statements that we kind of ignore. And do we think, similar to what Linda was talking about a bit in the interview, mentorship or having a mentor for younger girls, do you think that would be a good way to offset some of that? Or is that something that you mostly do kind of later on in your professional career?
Oh, no. I think I'm a Girl Scout leader, too, of one of my daughter's Girl Scout troops. And something, I was a Girl Scout for a short time when I was young, but it's really changed from what it was then to what it is now. And they talk all about leadership, about leadership. And there's like a business badge, and I love it. And they talk about how leaders don't have to be the person standing in front of everybody leading a discussion. That being a leader also has to do with integrity. It also has to do with being a good friend and helping and advocating for others. So I think this can start at a very young age.
That's really cool. I was not a Girl Scout.
I loved it.
And I'll be selling cookies and
At the Women in Behavior Analysis Conference, over the cookie table.
honestly, last year I bought a bunch and I did give them away to some of the speakers. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was in their gift bag. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
You got some Thin Mints right here.
I don't think they're called Thin Mints anymore.
What?
That can't be true.
Okay.
I thought I bought some last year.
Oh, maybe it's one of them changed.
Some Americans, the Samoas, I think.
Oh, the Samoas
changed
are no longer
their
Samoas. Yeah. They're
They're
delights.
caramel delights.
Yeah,
Delights.
that's it, yeah.
Okay.
Call them what you will. I love them anyway.
Let's talk about what LeBlanc had said to us.
Personally, in this article.
Yeah. This is from a group of interviews in the Behavior Analyst. And this was another article that probably occurred at the same time as Know Sick and Grow were collecting the data on women's representation.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the Behavior Analyst in 2015. And they go through and they talk about how they selected these women scientifically. And they interviewed Judith Favell, Anna Petersdotter, Carol Pilgrim, Beth Salter-Azaroff, Bridget Taylor, and Frances McSweeney. WiBA is a great place to go, I think, especially in today's day and age where I've got my master's online. And a lot of other people get their master's online and they don't have that traditional verbal community. And they don't develop those mentorship relationships. And this is a way that you can go and you can admire somebody from afar. You don't have to be close. And you can still benefit from them as a mentor. And we also have formal mentorship sessions where we try to set up some of our more distinguished and experienced people in the field that want to mentor early professionals. So, and Linda has always kindly volunteered. And you can see throughout the article her dedication to the field. These articles are broken up into, or these interviews are broken up into two sections, one on history and background, and the other section is on advice and guidance. And it's just like pearls of wisdom. Mm-hmm. Every time I read this, I just appreciate something else out of it.
Yeah.
And this is what I loved about WiBA and listening to these women. And there is a bit of a difference. I like the bit of relief to hear from women who are doing it all, or are trying to. Mm. And, sometimes when they come and they say, I failed or it was miserable, it's like a little bit of weight is lifted off your shoulders.
Right.
So, yeah, this was a great article. And some of the things that I appreciate about Linda is that I think I see lacking in our field more and more is the appreciation for the history and context of behavior analysis and how important that is. There's a lot of people that don't know who's who in the field, and what their contributions are, more importantly.
Yeah.
One of her quotes here, I also think that we have to find ways to continue to communicate to our new young professionals the values that go with our field. That is, we take pride in producing meaningful change in the lives of people with disabilities, and we have a long and important history of doing so. We have to tell younger professionals every day about the important events and people in the history of our field to create appreciation for those amazing leaders who preceded us in different times. And I think that's something that we are able to accomplish at WiBA, and giving people to hear how hard it was and what the work was like, and you were appreciated or recognized for it or not. But we do have a very rich history.
That's very true.
I love that.
Yeah, one thing I love about this article, too, is when she states that you should be really decisive and plan your career goals based on what you want to do in the long term. So instead of just doing, stop and plan, I think that's a really good sound advice.
Yeah. And finding mentors who can help you along that path.
Right.
Because it seems so daunting, when you're first studying, you have no idea what you might want to do generally, or at least I didn't.
Well, typically I find myself in dilemmas, and the ability to be able to reach out to somebody and talk me through a dilemma, or multiple people, that has been super. That's been very great about. And even with Linda, I'm planning this conference. I've been able to reach out to her and the other advisory committee members to talk me through some pretty serious problems that I've found myself in.
That's one of the nice benefits of the growth of some smaller either state conferences or, as you said, kind of boutique conferences like Women in ABA. The ability to have the smaller group where you can check in or have those mentorship opportunities. Because I know when I go to a bigger conference, everyone's always been very nice when I've gone up to them, but there is that sort of sense of, oh, should I go up to the person who just gave the invited address and ask them an important question about my career? Oh, no, that's too embarrassing. I can't. And that's why I have no guidance and I just have a podcast. That's all I do.
Well, I definitely think they welcome it. I mean, that's what it's for. And it means, hey, you were listening to what I said and you appreciate, you look up to me, and you appreciate that I can give you some value and help you with your career.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I am horribly shy, and the idea of going up to someone like that and talking to them is completely aversive to me. But as I've aged, I've realized that I think that it is appreciated sometimes by the speaker. And if you come forward with good questions or, interest in striking up maybe a longer term mentorship, then some of them can be really open to that. And if it's someone that you look up to, then you should give it a shot.
I think they want to protect us. And I think in protecting us and helping us, they're protecting the field.
Yeah. No, that's so perfectly stated.
Yeah, we could, there are ethical pitfalls to working with people with special needs or implementing the practices and procedures of behavior analysis every day. People do want to help us and protect the field.
I love that. And our field has really grown just exponentially in the last, 10 to 20 years. And there's a lot of folks out there, like you said, who may have gotten their degrees online or maybe don't have a close-knit group of other behavior analysts that they work with, or someone who can serve as their mentor, who they can run problems past. So it seems like a conference like WiBA is a perfect opportunity to set up some of those relationships.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's something I really look up to Linda for, and I've heard her speak on it a couple different times. And she'll be speaking at the conference on mastering core professional skills for success as a behavior analyst.
Oh, nice.
But something that she's great with is having difficult conversations and understanding the importance of that. So I feel like so often, and I see this within our own practice, that, oh, you're a really great behavior analyst. I'm going to promote you.
Yep.
Well, you're struggling with some of the management skills, so going back and developing those leadership skills, because just because you're a great practicing clinician doesn't always mean that you're a great leader or a great manager of people. So, yeah, some of her, she says she's a strong proponent of copious amounts of praise and direct supportive feedback. And if you're constantly telling people what they do well, you can phrase the need for change as an opportunity to see them do even better. then people generally appreciate and value feedback. And it's one thing to hear that, and then it's another thing to pull it off.
Right.
So I find myself, it takes iterations. It takes practice. So I find myself receiving this advice, and then I have a couple of experiences where I try it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go back and get, listen to the similar messages, and then go back and try it again. It's an art.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're able to accomplish it so that people see the need for change as an opportunity, that's impressive. That means you're good at giving feedback.
I want to go to that talk. Giving feedback's the worst.
Yeah.
We did 3 whole podcasts about it.
We really did. We spent 3 hours on giving feedback.
Yeah. And so you bring up a good point too. WiBA, we're trying to get parity in who attends. So I think you should attend, Robert.
Oh, okay. I will try. I don't like to fly. I don't know if it's not a gender thing. It's just me. I don't like flying. I would happily
we could
attend.
go to Nashville.
You could drive. We drove to Nashville once.
So.
All right, but
we would get a man spread on the plane.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. Just because I'm inconsiderate, not nothing to do with who's sitting next to me. But it's okay to go, right? Men can go to
absolutely.
To the
in
conference.
Order to get more men involved, my husband will be there. But Ed Morris is giving a presentation this year on the history of women in behavior analysis.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
he's so great.
Yes, and he's been so supportive of me too. I kind of feel like once he heard about the conference, he started sending me all these articles.
Yeah.
And, yes, he was wonderful, and so I'll be really excited to host him this year.
That's fantastic.
It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It should be fun, and the goal is for everybody to have an enjoyable time, to learn something, and to leave and feel motivated.
I love that, and empowered.
Yeah, it's exhausting, this world.
It truly is.
All right, everyone. I know you've been waiting. We need to make sure we get in that second secret code word, and let's get right to it. It's parakeet. Parakeet.
Tweet, 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 tweet.
Yeah, the tiny bird. It tweets and stuff. Parakeet. We usually do the dissemination station section where we sort of talk about from this, what take-home points do we want from these articles to kind of go out to the listeners. And I think there are definitely a few that we reviewed here. Jackie, it's been a while though. Could you make the sound effects? I know it's been a little while. There we go.
Thank you.
So, Devon, from the articles that you shared with us today, what would you say the most important take-home point for any listener, other than, hey, if you want to hear more, you should totally come to the WiBA conference. But beyond that, like, what from these articles do you think everyone should be really paying attention to and really thinking about as practitioners?
I would say the value of gender equity in every aspect of our life, in raising children, in running a functional analysis. In that Ruiz article, she talks about, I was going to implement intervention to teach women to be assertive without realizing that could actually harm them in their career because they'd be seen as bitchy. So all the ways that it's important and reasons that it's important to practice gender equity and to be deliberately interrogative about it. Support women, support not just women, but gender equality, to make sure that although our field I consider a very progressive field, but I think that there's some women along the way that didn't get as celebrated or as recognized as they should have, to provide support and mentorship in a nice, conducive, small environment. So I think some of the other important things is the importance of mentorship. And I think so often that with the online programs, they're a huge benefit, but there's some cons too, that sometimes you can find yourself out there alone and not have a real understanding of the history of behavior analysis. I did a lot of surveys from last year's conferences, and people said, okay, mentorship, I get it, it's important. And it's like, well, I think if you say that, you don't get it. You don't get it. Because I need it every day. And I found ways that our advisory committee has just saved me from making big mistakes with the conference and this mission. I would say those are two big important takeaways. I'd say that we can look at the representation of women in behavior analysis via data. And we can see and track how that is growing and how we should be represented, and to give us goals to strive towards.
Nice. That sounds great. What this has made me think of is during our PhD program, Jackie, we had practicum, I think, with Rachel Thompson.
We did together.
Okay, good. I'm on the right track.
Yep.
And during one of those classes, she asked us, who are the women speakers that you look up to or that you seek out when you're at a conference? And I did not have an answer.
I didn't either.
To that question. Do you remember?
Yeah,
Yeah.
A lot of us didn't, and it was very sad.
Yeah. But just asking that question for me raised my awareness so much of thinking about, women specifically in our field. And, while I'm all about equal rights, I never think of, I guess I never think of myself like as a woman in the field. And yet you need to be aware that is the perception of others of you. And the way that we present ourselves is important. And I think thinking about other role models and mentors that you can look up to in the field when you're going to conferences and interacting with them is important to kind of have at the forefront of your awareness. And just because you're a prestigious woman in the field doesn't mean you need to act like a man. I think that women can be powerful in their own way and shouldn't have to just mimic exactly what men in the field do. So bringing that up really changed my whole outlook on how I think about things and how I seek out who I'm going to listen to at conferences and really look at how they've shaped their careers as women.
Do you want a trivia question?
Yes.
Ooh, yes.
Sure
Give us
Close
another
us
one.
out.
Okay. This is about ABAI fellows.
Ooh.
And the fellow program began in 2004.
Okay.
And I thought of this question because Linda LeBlanc is a fellow. So of the 99 fellows, how many of them are women?
42.
39.
50.
17.
Ooh.
Oh. I should have said 1. I would have won.
Right?
Price is Right rules.
Oh
Man.
my goodness, really?
Yeah, so
Okay.
those are things that you can get on the ABA website and check out. I enjoyed checking out the presidents and who was the first female president and the fellows. The first fellow may have been Frances McSweeney.
Really? Huh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Wow.
don't quote me on that.
Okay.
All right.
We
We'll get more information because Dinah's going to release her presidents and women in ABA flashcards
That's right.
set.
Look for it.
The coffee cups. It really irked me when they had the coffee cups at the bookstore at ABAI and they were all men.
Right?
That actually
Very
made me a little sad too.
Yeah, it was Jack Michael and was it Murray Sidman and Skinner and Keller, maybe?
Yeah, I think.
That's my new dream,
To get on a mug?
to be on the ABAI mug.
Dream big,
Yeah.
Jackie.
Dream big. Jackie's
Shoot for
face.
the moon.
First woman coffee mug.
Yep.
We
There
can just
you
make
go.
our own mugs.
No.
Not the
I
same.
want somebody else
They can
to
say
make a mug of me.
ABAI inside track on the bottom.
That's funny.
I'll get you that for Christmas. I'll make you your own mug. Well, Devon, before we go, we really, really appreciate you bringing this topic. I don't want to say to our attention because 67% of our hostage here is aware of women in behavior analysis. Actually, 100% are aware of women in behavior analysis, but of the research behind women in behavior analysis and how much more there is to discuss. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your time and talking with us. Before we go, please make sure to plug the conference one last time in case anybody missed it any of the other times we talked about it.
Yeah, it's the Women in Behavior Analysis Conference at the Opryland, as they call it, the Gaylord Opryland Resort in Nashville, Tennessee, March 22nd through the 24th of 2018.
It's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
And what's
Thank
the
you.
web address?
It's on my company's website, so it's on thebaca.com, thebaca.com. You'll find it
Okay.
there.
Excellent.
So thank you guys for the opportunity. I really enjoyed this.
Well, Devon, again, thank you so much. I hope all of you check out the BACA.com, the BACA, for more information on the Women in Behavior Analysis Conference. It was a great topic. I hope you all had as much fun as we did. For those of you who enjoyed our show, and we hope that was 100% of you, we are a bi-weekly show, although we do have little episodes every week in between. But we have a full-length topic like Women in Behavior Analysis every other week. You can find us online as ABA Inside Track. You have a Facebook page, Twitter. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you download podcasts. If you don't want to miss a single moment of all the information, any of our guests, or any of the things that we share from the articles that we read. And if you have any feedback or questions, you can email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to Devon Sundberg, Jackie, Diana. We'll be back next week with another episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye-bye. See you.